Once upon a time, in a bustling city, there was a 20-year-old young woman named Naomi. Beautiful and full of life, she was known by everyone as the hotel girl. Naomi lived without worries, enjoying every moment and making choices that brought her happiness in the present. She frequented luxurious places, dated wealthy men, and didn't care about the consequences. Her parents, Pastor Jiro and Mama Ida, were highly respected individuals. Her father led a large church in the city, and her mother helped guide the many followers. They were known for their wisdom and dedication, but their own daughter, Naomi, rejected their values. She had chosen a lifestyle completely opposite to their beliefs. Seeing their efforts to bring her back to the right path fail, her parents made a painful decision: they cut ties with her. Naomi, on her side, had no intention of changing. For her, life was meant to be lived fully, and nothing or no one could stop her. But as an old saying goes, life always catches up with us, no matter how fast we try to run. Naomi didn't know yet that her destiny was about to change forever. Naomi continued to live her carefree life, never worrying about the consequences of her actions. She spent her days in luxury hotels, associating with wealthy men who gave her money and gifts in exchange for her company. She believed nothing could hinder her freedom and pleasure. But life, unpredictable as it is, began to play tricks on her. One day, Naomi fell ill. Thinking it was just a minor issue, she went to the hospital to see a doctor. After several tests, she learned that she was pregnant. For her, it was a disaster. Naomi didn't want a child. She had always said that a baby would ruin her body and put an end to her lifestyle. She immediately asked the doctor to perform an abortion. But this time, things were different. The doctor reminded her that she had already had numerous abortions in the past, which had weakened her health. He warned her that if she went through another one, she risked losing her life or never being able to have children again. Furious and desperate, Naomi left the hospital to look for another solution. But wherever she went, doctors refused to help her, giving her the same warning: another abortion would be too dangerous. Depressed, Naomi resigned herself to keeping the child. She moved to another city to avoid the judgment of those around her and awaited the birth of the baby with bitterness. 9 months later, she gave birth to a boy. But instead of feeling joy, she saw him only as an obstacle. She resented him for the suffering she had endured and for ruining what she considered her freedom. Shortly after, Naomi made a radical decision: to abandon the baby. One night, she went to a poor area of the city, a slum, and left her child on the ground, ignoring his cries. She turned her back without looking back and returned to her carefree life, pretending to everyone that she had simply traveled abroad. What she didn't know was that this abandonment would mark the beginning of a long journey of lessons and changes, not only for her but also for the child she had left behind. In the slum where Naomi had abandoned her baby, his cries caught the attention of passers-by. Most were too afraid or hesitant to approach, but a man named Kofi, known for his kind heart, couldn't ignore him. Gently, he picked up the baby and took him home. Kofi lived with his wife, Oma, a couple who had been childless after 10 years of marriage. When Kofi arrived with the baby in his arms, Oma was initially shocked. "Where did this baby come from?" she asked, troubled. "I found him abandoned in the slum," Kofi replied. "I couldn't leave him there." Although worried about the complications this might bring, Oma agreed to take care of the baby. They named him Caleb, a name meaning courage and hope, and decided to raise him as their own son. Caleb grew up surrounded by the love of his adoptive parents, despite their modest means. Kofi and Oma worked hard to provide him with an education and a decent life. Caleb, grateful for everything they did for him, showed early signs of intelligence and kindness. However, life in their neighborhood was not easy. Other children nicknamed him the slum baby and often mocked him. At school, Caleb faced bullying and cruel songs about his origins. These taunts hurt him deeply, but he always found solace in his adoptive parents. One day, when Caleb was particularly sad, Kofi said to him, "Caleb, never let others' words define who you are. You are my son, and to me, you are a brave and worthy boy. Your value doesn't depend on what people say, but on what you do with your life." These words left a deep mark on Caleb. He decided to turn his pain into strength. He worked hard at school, determined to prove he was worth far more than the nicknames others gave him. His efforts eventually paid off. Caleb became one of the top students in his class and earned a scholarship to study at a prestigious medical university. Deep down, Caleb harbored a dream to become a doctor and help abandoned children and orphans, knowing what it meant to be saved and loved by people who weren't his biological parents. Despite the challenges, Caleb grew up with determination and resilience, ready to build a bright future. What he didn't know was that fate would one day lead him to cross paths with his biological mother, Naomi. Naomi, once young and carefree, began to feel the effects of her choices. Years passed, and the lifestyle she thought was without consequence caught up with her. She had hoped to secure a comfortable future by charming wealthy men, but as she aged, she became less sought after. One day, she met a powerful man, Mr. Raymond, a well-known politician in the city. Fascinated by his wealth and influence, Naomi became one of his many companions. She hoped this relationship would secure her place in society and ensure a stable future. But despite years by his side, Raymond refused to marry her. Naomi began to despair. She wanted a child with him, thinking it would strengthen their bond, but all her efforts were in vain. Every visit to fertility specialist ended with the same verdict: she could no longer conceive. As her dreams crumbled, Naomi came to believe it was punishment for her past mistakes. She remembered the repeated abortions and the baby she had abandoned, and a deep guilt began to consume her. While trying to find a solution to her infertility, she was involved in a severe car accident. Her life took an even darker turn when she learned the accident had caused irreversible injuries. She would never walk again. Confined to a wheelchair, she found herself alone and destitute. Still, Naomi hoped Mr. Raymond would come to her aid. But when he learned of her condition, he abandoned her without a word. In a brief message, he made it clear she was no longer useful to him and that he was moving on. This rejection broke Naomi. She had pinned all her hopes on this relationship, and now she was alone, with no one to help her. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Unable to support herself, Naomi lost everything: her apartment, her savings, and her status. She was forced to beg on the streets, returning to the same slum where she had once abandoned her son. Every day was a struggle to survive, and every night she wondered how she had come to this. The weight of her loneliness and regrets became unbearable. Naomi, once full of life and dreams, was now a broken woman, at the end of her strength, wondering if she had any reason to live. But as an old African proverb says, as long as there is life, there is hope. Naomi was about to discover that fate sometimes holds unexpected surprises. One day, as Naomi wandered the streets, tired and desperate, she deliberately wheeled herself toward an oncoming car. She wanted to end her suffering. Fortunately, the driver, a young man named Caleb, stopped just in time, avoiding hitting her. Panicked, he got out of his car to check on her. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm so sorry, I almost didn't see you," Caleb said, his face filled with concern. With tears in her eyes, Naomi bitterly replied, why did you stop? You should have killed me. I have nothing left to live for. Shaken by her words, Caleb decided to take her to the hospital to be cared for and monitored. While she rested, he couldn't stop thinking about this woman and the profound sadness she carried. Intrigued, Caleb returned the next day to visit her and started a conversation. "Mom, why do you want to end your life?" "Maybe I can help you," he said gently. Moved by his kindness, Naomi began to share her story. She spoke of her carefree past, her mistakes, and the child she had abandoned in a slum. As she recounted her tale, Caleb felt a strange sense of familiarity. The details she described matched his own past, the stories his adoptive parents had told him about the day they found him. Overwhelmed with emotion, Caleb decided to take a DNA test to confirm his suspicions. When the results came back, they confirmed what he had feared: Naomi was indeed his biological mother. This revelation shook him deeply. He returned to his office, consumed by an inner storm, torn between anger, sadness, and the desire to understand. Caleb went back to his adoptive parents, Kofi and Oma, to share the news. They understood his pain and encouraged him to choose forgiveness. "My son, we know this is difficult, but look at all that God has done for you despite your past. Forgiveness is also about freeing yourself. Give your mother a chance to make amends." After much reflection, Caleb decided to follow his parents' advice. He returned to the hospital to see Naomi. This time, he was ready to reveal the truth. Calmly, he handed her the DNA test results. "Take this and read, Mom," he said. Naomi, troubled, opened the document with trembling hands. When she read the results, her eyes filled with tears. You're my son. My Caleb is alive," she exclaimed, her voice breaking with emotion. Tears streaming down her cheeks, Naomi turned to him and asked for forgiveness. "I'm sorry, my son. I didn't know any better. I was young and selfish. Please, find it in your heart to forgive me." Caleb, though still hurt, couldn't ignore the sincerity in her words. They cried together, a moment filled with emotion and reconciliation. Caleb decided to give her a second chance, and Naomi, moved by his forgiveness, committed to rebuilding their bond. That day, fate gave Naomi an opportunity she had never thought possible, to reconnect with her son and prove that she could still change. It was the beginning of a new relationship between them, built on forgiveness and hope. After their reconciliation, Caleb decided to help his biological mother, Naomi, rebuild her life. Though he had grown up with the scars of her abandonment, he understood that forgiveness was the key to moving forward. With the support of his adoptive parents, Kofi and Oma, he offered Naomi a chance to start anew. Naomi, deeply touched by her son's kindness, began to change. She realized that her mistakes didn't define who she could become. Determined to redeem herself, she accepted Caleb's help to overcome her struggles. Thanks to him, she found a place to live and received the care needed to improve her health. For the first time in her life, Naomi experienced the warmth of a family. Kofi and Oma welcomed her with open arms, and together, they began to rebuild strong bonds. Naomi learned to appreciate the small things in life, and her heart softened as she witnessed the love and support Caleb and his adoptive parents offered her. Inspired by her journey, Naomi decided to dedicate herself to a cause close to her heart, helping abandoned and orphaned children. With Caleb's help, now a respected doctor, she founded a small charitable organization in the city. She committed herself to providing a home and a better future for children without families, hoping to prevent others from experiencing the pain she had caused her own son. Over time, Naomi found a new purpose in life. Her work with the children brought her a joy she had never known. As for Caleb, he continued to excel in his career, making his adoptive parents proud and inspiring the community that once mocked him. The people who had called him the slum baby were now the first to celebrate his success and dedication. For Naomi, this chapter marked a true rebirth. Although she couldn't erase her past, she chose to use it as a driving force to do good in the world. By working alongside Caleb, she found not only forgiveness but also true inner peace. Their story, though marked by pain and trials, became an example of resilience, love, and redemption. And as an old African proverb says, when hearts forgive, souls rise. Naomi and Caleb proved that it is never too late to repair mistakes and build a brighter future. The story of Naomi and Caleb teaches us that our choices, whether good or bad, leave lasting imprints on our lives. Naomi learned, sometimes painfully, that recklessness and selfishness eventually come at a price. But this story also shows that it is never too late to change, seek forgiveness, and make amends for past wrongs. Caleb's journey, on the other hand, illustrates the power of forgiveness and resilience. Despite the wounds of his childhood and the ridicule he endured, he chose to transform his pain into strength, becoming a source of inspiration for others. His forgiveness of Naomi not only freed her but also liberated himself from an emotional burden. This story reminds us of a universal truth: forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it opens the door to a better future. It highlights the importance of values such as compassion, gratitude, and familial love, whether from biological ties or those who choose us as their own family. Finally, this story invites us to reflect on an essential question: how do we use the trials in our lives to grow and help others? Just as Naomi turned her remorse into positive action through her charitable organization, each of us has the ability to transform our mistakes into opportunities to do good. Our mistakes don't define us, but our actions to correct them can. Forgiveness, love, and resilience are the keys to a peaceful heart and a meaningful life.